So, greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking Live with Dale. We are talking today. I wanted to come today and talk about saying yes to opportunity, stepping out in faith and into opportunity. So, saying yes anyway, right? If you're joining me for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you are a returning listener, thank you so much for joining. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Dale Barzee Pond. I am a retired, maybe perhaps I shouldn't say retired. I have been a registered nurse for 51 years now. I no longer do patient facing work, but I still work. Um, I am the founder and the host of the YouTube channel Nurses Talking, where I speak to nurses anywhere in the world and at any stage in their nursing journey. And the goal of that is to highlight nurses, is for us to see who nurses are, because I believe most of us don't know who nurses are, what we're doing, where we can be, and show you that nursing is more than just institutional work. We are everywhere. We can be everywhere, and we do all sorts of things. We're entrepreneurs and educators and innovators and all of that. But that's Nurses Talking. That's a recorded. That's a recorded YouTube channel. And if you would like to know, join me on YouTube. It's Nurses Talking. So now, Nurses Talking Live is a spin off of that. And we are talking about all things. I'm not just talking to nurses, I am talking about things that affect us all in everyday life, because as much as health is my thing, everything affects health. So we are talking about travel, we're talking about laughter, we're talking about opportunity, we're talking about setbacks and death and vaccines and what we eat and how we drive and all those kinds of things. So, welcome, welcome, welcome to Nurses Talking Live. And as I said, we're talking about saying yes anyway and stepping out in faith. And I will tell you what brought this one to mind, this live. Two things. One is coming to the end of the year. I just recently started, not recently, but over the last week or 2 weeks, I have been kind of looking back at my life over the past year, because it has been crowded, it has been busy, it has been at times overwhelming. So that was one thing. And the other thing was that someone invited me on their podcast very recently. And the first question that they asked was, what would I tell my younger self if I had the opportunity? What would I tell my younger self? And so those two things came together in my head to say, saying yes to opportunity opens all kinds of doors. And so if you need me to answer that question about what that person asked me, that question I said, I would tell my younger self that you don't have it all figured out. You don't. You're never actually really going to have it all figured out. You're going to have to take a step before you know what the end result is. So I'm sure all of you have had those moments where life presented an opportunity and your first thought was, oh, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready. That happened to me this past year. I traveled so much. Most of it actually was on not travel that was planned way ahead of time. Some of it was spontaneous, right? I opened a new business. I received an award, all of those kinds of things. And all of those things came about from saying, yes, okay. And much of it, I didn't know how it would end. So today we're going to really talk about this say yes anyway thing. All right. So sometimes the path appears after we take the step. And I'm going to give you one example of that. The first example I have to give you of that is my opening a business. I think I mentioned earlier that this year I opened a business, right? I don't think I ever really saw myself as an entrepreneur as such, but somewhere along the line one day this year, someone said to me, "Shouldn't you have a business?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not sure." And she said, "Go, just do it." I thought about it and I thought, you know what? She's right. But what do I do from here? How am I going to open this business? What is it going to be called? What is it going to serve? Who is it going to serve? What is the purpose? Where am I going to do with this? How am I going to get payments? All of those kinds of things that I did not know. I did a little bit of research, but most importantly, I called someone who I know is very business minded. I called my son and I said, listen, what do you think of this? Should I do this? Should I do that? And he walked me through some of the process, but his first response was, of course you should. Of course you should. I'm like, okay, so here's two people. And to be quite honest, in my heart of hearts, I wanted to walk that path, I wanted to see where that path would lead. And so I had to decide on a name. Have you ever tried to decide on a name for a business? My goodness, so many things ran around in my head. And I had to narrow it and narrow it and narrow it until I thought, well, all right, I want something that encompasses quite a few things. I want something that talks about my name. Let's keep it simple. And so the business is called Dale Barsley Enterprises, LLC. And at some future point in my future life, I'm going to go into what this business is about, and how we're going to function, and what I hope to see, how do I hope to see it grow. But for the most part, I will tell you right now that we are talking about principally an expansion of Nurses Talking, the YouTube channel. All right. And so to tell you a little bit more about the process for the business, I went to the bank to open a business account, and I'm telling the person helping me about, what I have in mind for this business. And she goes, girl, so what took you so long? You should have been here months before. Look at what you're doing. I was like, oh, isn't it interesting that other people can see things that you, with your head down, plodding along, don't really see? So I prepared a little bit for this. As I told you, I did a little bit of research. Google came up, and then I branched out into, as my daughter would say, I went down the rabbit hole. I spoke with my son. I spoke with the bank. And preparation is valuable. Preparation is actually key. But what creates clarity is action. What creates clarity is action. And what I learned was growth does not always announce itself politely. Sometimes it arrives disguised as an inconvenience or as an uncertainty. And sometimes you have to step back, take a hold of that uncertainty, take a hold of that inconvenience or presenting as inconvenience, and step out in faith. Faith is, sometimes we talk about blind faith. Faith isn't blind. Faith is actually brave. Faith is actually brave. And stepping out and taking that step gave me confidence that I didn't even know I had. I think I will share right here that I think for most of my life, I've struggled for confidence. It doesn't appear that way to people looking at me, but I think that I have. All right. So now that we've talked about that, there is also part of that stepping into a business was a pivot. And so here we're talking about the power of pivoting, right? And what I've learned is that a yes often opens new doors. I tell you this one, I just told you about the business, which actually has opened other doors, but not as much yet. It's growing slowly. But here is the other pivot that took place over this last year. I found out somewhere in March that I had been nominated for an award. I had no idea. Someone had to actually get in touch with me and said, are you aware that you were nominated for an award? This was from the Caribbean Global Awards. And I was like, no. And so she said, yes, you've been nominated for an award, and here is what, go and look at it and you will see what you need to do. And so I did. And I submitted whatever they asked me to submit, and then promptly forgot about it, or at least put it aside. Because honestly, when I looked, I did not see myself as someone who would actually win an award. Later in the year, in July, I found out via email and phone call and a posting on LinkedIn that I was a finalist in a particular category. The category was Outstanding Global Nurse, and I thought, okay, now we're really out of my league. I'm out of my depth, and I was flattered. I was truly more than flattered. I was gratified. I felt good about it. But outstanding global nurse, I did not see myself winning. And so, having done a lot of travel in the last year, by that time, because by that time I had already been to the Caribbean twice, and had visited about 4 islands. I had already been to England twice in that time, and I knew, and I was going to visit Yellowstone and an Alaskan trip. So that was a lot of travel already in my um, in my life. And I thought, well, okay, I will watch. I knew that this was going to be streamed live, and I thought I will watch from home, because I would really love to support, but I don't see myself going back to England for a third time to attend this gala and this award ceremony. I told my son that I was going to watch from home, and he very quietly said, "We're not doing that." And before I knew it, I had, fare to England and whatever. And so, if you know me, I like to dress up. So I bought myself this fancy dress, went to England. My brother and my niece accompanied me to the gala. And guess what? I won the award. While I enjoyed myself being there and I felt comfortable with everyone being there, and I was gratified to be there and in such august company, I was flabbergasted. My niece, had been telling everyone that I was going to win this award, and thankful for her sense of certainty. But I was so flabbergasted that when I won, and I went up to accept my award, I still have no idea quite what I said. But here is what happened. I got the award. I met a whole lot of people who I came to know. And just as importantly, it opened another door. It opened another door. About 2 weeks after the award, someone reached out to me and said, "I think that you should consider being the ambassador to Montserrat for the Caribbean Global Awards. If you don't know, Montserrat is where I was born and where I was raised." And that, I had to take a step back. I had to take a breath. I was like, "Ambassador? Are you kidding?" And somewhere in my consciousness, something said, "Don't discount this. See what it's about." And so I responded with, "Let me see what's involved." And so they sent me back information about what's involved. And I thought, well, you don't really have a choice, do you? There is no ambassador of the Caribbean Global Awards to Montserrat. And so someone is offering you this. You're obligated to take it, even on behalf of yourself, on behalf of Montserrat and everything. And so I consented to do that. I am so happy that I did, because now I get to be part of something that is so much bigger than me and promotes Caribbean excellence, Caribbean unity, Caribbean, we're so broad, Caribbean values, Caribbean excellence, and I get to be part of that. And so just going to the award, being nominated for the award, going to the awards, when opened this door to me now being able to represent at least one little part of the Caribbean in an organization that is devoted and committed to exposing and showcasing the Caribbean. What could be better than that? What could be better than that? So, when you're invited to join a project, when you're invited to attend a conference, when you're invited to collaborate, say yes. Even if you don't know yet where it will lead. Some of life's best opportunities often come from unexpected invitations. Now, I'm not advocating that you have to chase every single thing that is presented on your plate, because lots of things will be. The more doors open, the more doors will open. But things that align with who you are, things that tug at your heartstrings, things that when you hear them in your head, say, "Oh, I would love that," but maybe not. Say yes. Step out in faith. Take the brave step. You can do this. So tell me, what have you said no to lately that you might revisit with a new mindset? Think about that. Think about that. Because you know what? In thinking over my life, over the past year and thinking over my life, I can think of things that I said no to or I shrank away from that probably I would have benefited from, and more importantly, probably I would have been able to help someone else to benefit from. So think about that. And now we're talking about pivoting. Someone said, I saw someone post the other day, and I'm not sure on which platform, but someone posted that the comfort zone is where dreams go to die. Is where dreams go to die. That resonated with me because it is so very true. If you stay where you're comfortable, you don't grow. A few days ago, my husband and I took a drive up to Hartford, Connecticut. It's not far from where I live. It's about an hour's drive. And we just, took a drive to get out and to spend some time in Hartford, walking around Hartford, visiting parks, and stuff like that. We went into a restaurant and we happened to be sitting next to a young man. And we got into brief conversation, sporadic kind of conversation. But one of the things he said to me was that he owned six boutique hotels in Hartford. He's a young man, and I guess my expression was like, "Wow, you're so young." I would guess he's somewhere in his mid-30s to maybe early 40s, maybe. I think early 40s, maybe stretching it a little bit, just looking at him, but I could be wrong. However, the point was, he said, everyone, when I started doing this, everyone thought I was crazy. He said, heck, I thought I was crazy, but I did it anyway. And what I said to him was, if you're not taking a risk, you're not going anywhere. And he said, there you go, you've got that right. Now, this is a young man who, for all intents and purposes, is doing quite well, but he took the risk, even as a young man. And so I want to encourage you to just step out a little bit, out of the comfort zone, into the courage zone, because I knew it took courage for him to build this thing that he's building. And I know, given the brief conversation that I had with him, he's not done. So step out of the comfort zone. Step into your courage zone. It's going to take courage, and sometimes you're going to feel daunted. I feel daunted all the time. Let's take, for me, I want to say, even doing this live, doing Nurses Talking Live is, I've only been doing this now for about 2 months, right? And taking that step was for me a huge thing. Because I had been doing Nurses Talking, which is pre-recorded, for the longest while. And I do it recorded because it was both comfortable for me and for my guests. I could edit all kinds of things. The first time I did it, the second time I did live, the third time I did live, this time I did live, and I have to sit here with my heart pounding, thinking, okay, am I going to get it right? Am I going to get it right? Am I going to get it right? But you've got to step into your courage zone all the time. Comfort zone is good. Comfort zone is good, but it provides comfort. Courage zone provides progress. Courage zone provides challenge. Courage zone provides reward. So step into your courage zone now and then. Growth happens when you're visible. Courage, by the way, is contagious. As you step into your courage zone, you do something that requires courage. You encourage someone else to do the same. You inspire someone else to take hold of their courage and do what they need to do. So I'm going to wrap up this live by saying to you this. This year has taught me that saying yes about being fearless is not about being fearless. It's not really about being fearless. It's about being faithful. It's about taking the first step. It's about understanding that very often when we take the first step, the path rises up to meet us. If you're going up steps, right? When you put your foot on the first step, you cannot see where the landing is on the top step. But you take those steps trusting that there will be a landing at the top step. And it's the same thing when you want to step out in something. Take those steps. The path will come to meet you. So whether your less looks like a new business, a creative project, a long delayed trip, step forward and say yes anyway. Say yes. Now, remember, faith and fear, both of them ask us to believe in something we can't yet see. Both of them, faith and fear, ask us to believe in something that we cannot see. Only one of those keeps us moving forward. Fear doesn't. Fear doesn't. Have a little faith in yourself. The choice is yours. The choice is yours. Until next time, this is Dale signing off from Nurses Talking Live, inviting you to join me on my YouTube channel, Nurses Talking, and I will see you again as we pursue, because I think I'm going to pursue this idea of moving forward. I think I'm going to pursue it in another live. We're going to talk about, the road to my business. We're going to talk about the road to my award. We're going to talk about perhaps your own road. And if there is something that you want to do, if there is something that is tugging at your heart that you would like to pursue, go ahead and do it. Leave me a comment in the chat and I will see it and we can talk about it next time.